joining us. John Ammon is a law school professor at St. Louis University and a legal expert.
He joins us now live in studio with Ann Allred to give us more insight into this indictment. Ann?
Mike and Kay, thank you, and John, thanks for coming on short notice as our legal expert. We appreciate it. This is a Class D felony, lowest grade felony. If he were convicted, what are the sentencing guidelines?
Well, it's up to 4 years in a state prison. This is not a federal charge. We need to make that clear. This is a state charge, up to 4 years in prison. Probation is an option, and I think the prosecutor would even tell you that even an average person charged with this crime would probably get probation if they had no prior offenses and they were a good citizen otherwise. So
he wouldn't spend a day in jail.
There's no chance the governor is going to spend any time in jail on this. If they take him to trial a year and a half from now, which is probably what it would take, and if he were convicted, any judge in this town would give him probation.
Okay, and in this indictment, they say he allegedly transmitted the image contained in the photograph in a way that allowed access to that image via a computer.
Right.
So that you were explaining to me that the threshold for this crime, to meet the threshold that would allow for an indictment, is pretty low.
There's two parts to the statute, and one is if he intentionally shared it with somebody, but the second one, which is I think what they've alleged, that he had it on a computer or maybe his cell phone where somebody else could have had access to it, and that's all it takes. So let's say he had a photograph on his cell phone and his senior staff have access to a cell phone. That would be enough under the statute, and I would submit that this type of thing happens many times a day all over the country and even in St. Louis. We have teenagers sexting and we have people taking photographs
without people knowing.
Without people knowing, and if they store it in a place where somebody else could have access to it, they're liable under the statute in a criminal court.
So it doesn't necessarily mean he shared it, just that somebody else could be access to his email or his phone and see it.
That's right, and as I believe Mike pointed out, and Casey pointed out, there's no allegation of extortion or blackmail here, so they didn't have that and they didn't charge that. All they charged was that if there was a photograph, it has to be a photograph, and that he put it in a place where somebody else could access it.
And now, since the grand jury has come back, do you think that means the blackmail is a moot point? We're not going to see that come down? Hard to say.
Hard to say. The investigation, I'm sure they will tell you, is ongoing. You start with this charge. The governor's people would have a right to take the deposition. In Missouri, we can do depositions in criminal cases. They would have a right to depose the people who, the police officers who investigated it, if the woman's complaining about this now. So there's a lot of discovery. Now, his attorneys indicated they're going to file a motion to dismiss. We'll have to see what that's based on. But even if that fails, there'll be some discovery and they'll be taking some depositions. They're going to push back hard, there's no question.
So his next court date is March 16th.
Right.
What happens then?
That's just a perfunctory appearance to show up in court. That's not going to be the trial date. As I said, the trial date is more than a year away if there's going to be one. That's just an initial appearance. There's not going to be any bond. He'll be out on his own recognizance. That's just for the attorneys to show up and maybe talk about setting a trial schedule and that sort of thing. It's just a very early appearance. They may or may not enter a plea then. A plea could come later, but obviously we know his lawyer is going to enter a not guilty plea.
One last question. As a sitting governor to be the defendant in a criminal case, where does that leave things for talks of impeachment or the Republicans saying you need to step down, and how does this maybe end up?
The political side of it is really what's going to drive the train over the next few weeks. The criminal procedure stuff, nothing's going to happen until March, as you indicated. A lot's going to happen between now and that court date on the political end, and we'll have to see. There will be calls for his resignation, obviously, and the governor will tell you, I have a lot of work to do. A lot of people are depending on me, and that's true. There's deals in the works and things on his desk, and it'll be very interesting to see. But the political side is what's going to play out over the next few weeks, not the court proceedings.
John Ammon, thank you so much. Mike Kay.
And one thing that the governor has said so far up till now is that he is not going to resign. So if he's going to be impeached, that's a whole different story. But the governor up until now has said he is not going to resign.